It was 2003, and I'd just left my hotel close to the bottom of Sukhumvit Road after arriving in Thailand for the first time only a few hours before. My mind was racing as I tried to take in all the sights around me, and my heart was beating faster than I think it had ever beaten before. As I was walking, I saw Soi 4 to my right, but I kept walking further up the road. Not far later, I came to an overpass, which I crossed to get to the other side, and I continued walking until I came across Soi 11. This was the street I was advised to go to first, and to make my way to an interesting little expat bar a few hundred metres down the street called Cheap Charlie's. Within a few minutes of turning onto Soi 11, I found myself at this little bar. It was nothing more than a hole in a wall, a few chairs outside, and it had some rather interesting signage that left nothing to the imagination. I guess there must have been over 20 people crowded into this place. Everyone was standing up, everyone was holding a beer, and in the crowd I saw the person that I was there to meet. My friend had moved to Thailand 2 years before I went for the first time, and he called out, "Welcome to Thailand." He called out loud, and everyone turned around to see what the commotion was about. He had this smile on his face, just like he was going to initiate me into this special club that was Thailand Knife, as if knowing him meant I could somehow skip the queue to becoming a Thailand guy, and I was playing on and living in the moment. From an outside perspective, this might not have seemed like such a big event, but when it comes to moving to Thailand, this scene that was unfolding in front of me, with me as one of the main characters, was a common event back then. It was as if there was some form of initiation to Thailand, and I had to go and earn my right to be there. I'd just turned 46, and I was there to retire early, full of dreams and hopes of never having to return home again. The rest of the night unfolded similar to the kind of rite of passage, and I finished the night feeling like my retirement was guaranteed because I did everything that I should have done. 3 years later, in 2006, my early retirement was on rocky ground. I'd invested in a hotel project together with a few other investors, and I guess I was either stupid or unlucky. Let's just call it unlucky because it was looking like this investment was going to lose 100%. If that was the case, I wouldn't be able to live in Thailand anymore, and I'd have to start all over again. How things progressed over those 3 years, from 2003 to 2006, it was nothing like I planned. My plan was to get to know the country, find a place to live, and find things to occupy my time. The problem was I was hooked on Thailand, and I felt like I wanted to have something in Thailand, to be successful in Thailand as well, to prove that what I did at home wasn't a fluke. It was these dreams and deep-seated ambition that put me in that precarious position, and at the end of 2006 I was returning home after losing about 80% of my entire net worth. Thailand had chewed me up and spit me out. My retirement was well and truly over before I'd even hit the age of 50. If I can look back and change anything that I did, it would have been not understanding right there and then that Thailand is an altogether different animal to anything I was used to. And just because you can have success in your own country doesn't mean you can have success in Thailand. The thing was, though, when I was flying home thinking about what I was going to do next, all I thought about was eventually moving back to Thailand for retirement round 2. I didn't know how long it would take to be able to get into that position, but I didn't think that I failed in Thailand. I just thought I wasn't lucky, and I wanted to be able to prove to myself that Thailand wasn't something different. Although if I'd accepted that it was, I guess I wouldn't have ended up where I am today. My story is a love affair with Thailand, its people, but if I'm being truthful to myself, it's a love affair with the version of myself that I saw when I was in Thailand. It was wanting the feelings that I felt for myself, to be able to be feelings that other people felt for me. I think that's why Thailand became like a drug for me. From an early retirement at 46 to arriving back home at 49 with the knowledge that I had to start again, it was very difficult. I didn't lose all my money, far from it, but I didn't have enough money to just live anymore and do other things. The investment that I made should have provided me with more than enough money, even more on top of what I already had, and I was just so attracted to the idea of doing something in Thailand. I had to quickly get over that and reapply myself because I didn't like the idea of working indefinitely. When I arrived back home, what kept me going and what kept me motivated and working as hard as I could was the thought of being able to return to Thailand. Initially, I stayed with a friend when I arrived home. I gave the tenants renting my property notice, and as soon as they moved out, I was able to move back into my own house. That was my last asset. And I guess around 2006, it was good to be in property because my plan was to completely renovate the house, sell it, and trying to find another one and do the same thing again and again until I felt like I had enough money. That's what I did before I moved to Thailand. I'm an electrician by trade, and also I like to think of myself as being pretty handy when it comes to plumbing and basically all other handiwork that you need to do around the house. Before I go any further, I think that's the thing that made Thailand not as good for me as I would have liked it to have been. Because I was from England, buying houses and renovating them and selling them, that was almost in our DNA. I wanted to be able to do things like that in Thailand because it was so much more fun to think about doing something like that there. And I guess that's why I invested in that hotel business, because it was sort of within the realms of property, which was my interest. But anyway, it doesn't work like that, so there's no point wishing that it did. As soon as I moved back into that house, I spent the next 3 months putting the remainder of my liquid cash, about £25,000, into it, and I immediately put it on the market. Now, I'm not saying that it's easy to renovate properties in the UK and sell them on or rent them out, especially today. I suppose it's more difficult today, but it just seemed to be a formula that I was able to follow that made money for me. And my house was worth about £130,000 before the renovation. After I put that money in, I was able to sell it for £190,000. Considering I did all the work myself, and it was my main residence, that wasn't bad profit for that amount of work. I'd lost about £300,000 in that hotel deal gone wrong, but that wasn't my target again. My target was a house rented out and £200,000 cash, and if I could make that goal, then I would be able to move back to Thailand for retirement round 2. In terms of a house to rent out, I just wanted something that would give me £500 a month. £500 a month back then would have covered my rent and all my utilities, and that's what my target was. I guess I was lucky that I did 3 more houses before 2008 came round and the prices were going insane all the time, and I got in and out quite well. But I will stress that there was luck involved which got me there. I had enough money to buy a small rental and a reasonable amount of cash, but then everything started going wrong approaching the end of 2008 in terms of the financial crisis. I went into it with cash, although I didn't have anywhere to live. I thought it would be wise to take a step back with all that was going on, and actually I went back to Thailand. Not to live, just to spend between 3 to 6 months, just taking things in and deciding where to go next. Pattaya was my place, and I don't have any qualms by saying that. I took over a condo on a month-by-month basis in Pratumnak, and just calmly waited to see what my next move would be. I'd avoided a serious relationship when I retired to Thailand at 46, the retirement that went wrong, although I enjoyed spending time with the girls. Back at the end of 2008 when I was in Thailand, just waiting for things out, seeing what I wanted to do next, I was probably spending 2 to 3 nights a week going out and having a good time. One thing that I don't really understand when I'm listening to other stories is not necessarily the stories themselves, it's the comments asking questions like, why would you get into a relationship with a bar girl? Now, this is coming from the perspective of someone who loves Thailand, even after everything that has happened, and who understands Thailand. At least, I would like to think I do. When someone comments that a bar girl is the equivalent of somebody in the West doing the same thing, I would have to disagree with you to the fullest extent that disagreement can go. This is not the same sort of thing. You have to understand that there is a spectrum of bar girls in Thailand, and while some of them, maybe a lot of them even, are very ruthless and manipulative and money hungry, not all of them are. To compare them to someone, for example England or America, doing the same thing is a huge step to take. I don't understand how anybody could make that comparison. To me, it just shows a complete lack of understanding about Thailand, because I can promise you when you walk into a bar in Pattaya, you order a drink and start talking to a girl, while guys like us that do that know what it's all about, it's not the same as what would go back on at home. The girls that work in the bars in Thailand, well, perhaps that's their job, It's not like as transactional as many people think. Many of these girls come from the poorest places in Thailand. They have families to support, and many of them are looking for a better life. I don't think they get a fair rap, apart from the bar girl that I met after being in Thailand for approximately 2 months. I'll give you that, she was a bad one. But when I met her, I didn't know. I had no idea. I was in my early 50s. I can't remember if I was 50 or 51. Probably 51 if I think about it. But I felt not a day different to how I felt when I was 30. I had the same ideas, the same hopes, and the same mental ability. I was fit and healthy, and I didn't feel any different. I think the fact that inside me I was just the same person that I was when I was 30, maybe a few more grey hairs on the side of my head because I was bald on top, but apart from that I was the same. I was down soy 6, and it was a Thursday, and I remember that because it just so happened to coincide with my grandfather's birthday, and I always went out on his birthday to pay respect. He passed away over 20 years ago, but some of my fondest memories growing up were with him, and because of that I went out to celebrate his birthday every year. It was there, down soy 6, that I met that girl, but that night all I did was chat to her for a few hours. But it was a very memorable conversation for a few reasons I failed to understand. I wasn't out for that evening though, and there was one restaurant that I'd planned to go to eat a particular meal, which was my grandfather's favourite, and it was just a tradition that I still keep up with today. I finished the night just walking back to my place in Pratumnak, but I wasn't able to get that girl out of my head. She was 29, which was quite old for a bar girl, from the province of Phetchabun, and she just appealed to me in a way like I don't know why, looking back. The following day, I'm in the gym in the morning, and something I did all the way up until I was 60, and I decided I would go back to that bar in the evening to talk to her again and see if there was anything like the feelings were like before. I remember the place I was renting though. The gym had a view out to the ocean, and I thought that this mornings and mornings like this was what I liked about Thailand and what I would want to do. And I just wished that I could work doing what I did in England in Thailand. If I could, it would have been amazing. I'm not saying that I tried to do that in Thailand or tried to convince myself. I was just wishing that that would have been a possibility, because how much more fun would it have been? But I guess it doesn't work like that, at least even slightly. But there I was, running on the treadmill, looking at the view, thinking about what I was going to do that evening and how long I was even going to be in Thailand before I wanted to go back and do more work in England. I didn't know, but I was having a good time. That evening, I did go back to her bar to talk with her again. I think it's pointless going through the nitty-gritty details here because what happened was I got there, we talked, I liked her, and things went from there. A week later, she's full-time at my place, and a month later, we'd already decided to get married. I know it was quick, considering that I'd never even been married before, and never had kids before, and she had too. I don't know what it was, but all of a sudden I felt like I had something real and something to be excited about. In a way, it was like I didn't know I had something missing in my life. But when I met her, when we started living together, it felt like the missing piece to my life that I didn't even know was missing. I'm still keeping an eye on things, how they are at home, because it wasn't my intention to just stay in Thailand. And I guess that's why I moved quickly to get married to her, because I would want to take her to England with me until we could move to retire permanently to Thailand. A month after we decided to get married, I was up in her village. She was from a very beautiful part of the country. It wasn't in Isan, but it was right next door. And she was from about 10 minutes out of the city, and also 10 minutes from the mountains where they had nice resorts and places that were very different to anywhere else I'd seen in Thailand. We did the whole wedding the Thai way. I got to know her family a bit, her 2 kids and her parents, and after we had the ceremony, we went back to Pattaya and got married at the district office. Looking back, I know that I was moving so fast, but I did think that I'd spent a lot of time with girls in Thailand, and I never had feelings like I had for her, so there must have been something to it. It wasn't like she was the first girl that I met. She was probably the 21st girl that I met, and the only girl that I felt like I actually wanted to spend my life with. So that's why it didn't feel like I was rushing. But when we're sat in my place somewhere around March 2009, I'm married, and the contract on my place is coming to an end. I asked her how she'd feel about going to live in England for a few years, and she said, okay. You have to understand that at this point in time, she was everything to me. She had a way about her that I couldn't quite put my finger on. It was the way that she did things that I always dreamed my wife would do, yet I never asked her to do these things or even told her what I liked. It was as if she could read my mind. Because of that, I thought that by being with her, that would make me a better person. It would make me be able to work harder and therefore save harder for both our futures. I was very traditionally minded in the sense that I wanted to make my wife happy. I wanted to support my wife, and I wanted to shower her with things that she wouldn't be able to have by herself, or that she wouldn't have been able to get from anyone else. But in return, I expected nothing more than 100% loyalty, and also to be treated like I wanted to be treated. What I'm trying to say is that in the early days of our relationship, this is exactly how things went. I was playing the role of a man, and she was playing the role of a woman. And when we were both doing this, everything was perfect. I think the difference between me and other guys is that I wanted to spoil her. I wanted to treat her. I wanted her to look at me as someone that she looked up to and respected, that she would never do anything bad to. And I wanted her to do that in her own way to me. When we decided that moving to England would be the best thing to do, I started looking into getting her a visit visa, but quickly realised it would be easier to just go for the spouse visa straight away. I had money in the bank that I was waiting to deploy in the next project, so I met the financial requirements without any issue, and I actually got a rental contract drawn up for a place to prove we had somewhere to move to, and everything else was just a formality. I really feel for the guys today that fall in love with someone from a different country and want to take them back home. The income requirements are getting insane, and while I don't agree with all the immigration going on to England today, especially the illegal stuff, there are some forms of immigration that should just be a basic human right. You have a wife, yes, okay, she can come. Now perhaps there should be certain caveats to that, such as your great-grandparent had to be English, otherwise it would be more difficult to take your spouse. I don't know, it doesn't matter, but it feels like they're going after the wrong people, at least in my opinion. It took us about 3 months from deciding that I wanted to take her to England with me to actually boarding the plane. She was approved for the spouse visa on the first application. I suppose you have to give credit to England. If you meet the rules and you have everything, they will give it to you. But even if the slightest thing is wrong, they won't. It was quite a stressful process because you always have that fear that she wouldn't get the visa, and then all the plans would have to change. But luckily she did, and somewhere approaching the end of 2009, we boarded a plane direct to London. She didn't exactly get the best welcome when we arrived. Because she was coming in on a spouse visa, we had to make sure that we had all the documentation with us even though we'd already applied for and got the visa. And she was taken into a room and asked lots of questions. But luckily they let me go with her, and the guy who was asking the questions did apologise, just saying he was doing his job and there was no choice. I really don't understand why they didn't see that I was English and therefore that's my wife, so you shouldn't give me these troubles. But she was let into the country and we got a train to Nottingham, where I was from. While I managed to get the rental agreement for visa purposes, the plan was to stay in a hotel because I wanted to quickly purchase my next house, as it really did feel like a good time to be a cash buyer. I thought if I did between 3 to 6 successful renovations, that would give us enough money to be able to retire permanently to Thailand and live the good life. But I didn't feel like I needed to rush because my wife was there with me. When we got to Nottingham, we checked into a hotel there, and I could tell my wife was quite overwhelmed by what she was seeing. She kept saying how it wasn't like she thought it was. Why was it so cold? Why was everything so expensive? Why did everything look so dull? Why are all the people looking at me like that? And I just hoped that she would start to feel better soon. We spent 2 months in a hotel, which cost a pretty penny, but I had my eye on a house that I'd seen online. I went to view it as soon as I got back, and I put in an offer which was accepted, and I took possession approximately 2 months after arriving back in England. When I took possession of the house, it needed absolutely everything doing to it. It wasn't really suitable to live in, but I was someone who was prepared to rough it for the greater good, and I told my wife how it would work. First, we would get one room ready, then you could hang out there while I did the rest of the work on the house, and it should take 3 months to get it to a saleable condition, and we put it on the market. To start with, my wife was very excited about the prospect, and when we moved into this very badly worn down house, I was excited to get cracked into it, but almost immediately I could see that she was struggling. I didn't expect her to struggle because of the conditions of the house that she were brought up in were basically worse than this. But it wasn't like we didn't have any heating, so it was warm enough, but it just had a different feel, I suppose, to how things felt in Thailand. I find I'm waking up, getting ready to do the work in the house, and she's just complaining all the time about it, saying it's not like she thought it was, she's unhappy, she wants to go back to Thailand. And I'm telling her that we need to do this, and we need to do this 3 to 5 times, and then we'll have enough to retire to Thailand, and then do anything we want. I tried to persuade her, and she did understand, and she put up with it. But she wasn't anything like she was when she was in Thailand with me, and I just took that down to the fact that she was somewhere different, and she was struggling to get used to it. We did find a Thai supermarket that stocked all her favourite things, but every time we went there, she used to complain bitterly about how expensive the things were. She thought it was an outrage that a pack of mama noodles was so expensive compared to Thailand, and I told her, how do you think I feel in Thailand, where you can get your stuff so cheap, yet anything I want is considerably more expensive. That's how it works. But I was always buying her a favourite food if she wanted it, even if it was ridiculously expensive. I'm still treating her as well to small gifts all the time, and we're still a happy couple. But I just can tell she's struggling mentally by being in England because it's not what she thought it was. She'd pictured it as being a better version of Thailand, but instead it was a worse version of something worse than that. And what I think is, she didn't understand. People in Thailand nowadays perhaps don't look at somewhere like England as being the best place in the world. They understand that it's not, and they might not want to consider it. It only took me 2 months to fully renovate that house, and I could tell that my wife was surprised about how different it was when it was finished. I think it allowed her to see a very different side to me, not just the guy who she met at the bar she worked at, a guy who can actually work with his hands and turn something rundown into something great, and I could see her finally starting to be okay living in England. I'm proud to say I made £40,000 on that house when it was sold, and I told my wife, and she was shocked because it was about 2 million baht then. And she just said, why can't we do this in Thailand? I told her, I know, I wish we could, but it doesn't work the same. It's unfortunate that it doesn't, but it doesn't. And she just didn't really understand the idea of why it didn't work in Thailand. It was as if she wanted it to when she didn't understand. From buying it to renovating it to selling it was about 5 months. And when we were waiting for the sale to go through, I was looking for the next project. It just so happened to be a mile down the road, and it was in an even worse state than the last one. But the potential seemed to be there, and I wanted to go for it. My wife appeared to be happy as well, knowing how much money could be made, but again, when we moved in, it was very run down and pretty awful, if I'm being honest, and she's starting to think about Thailand again, saying this isn't right. Why can't we live in another house and do this one? But it was as if she didn't understand that the idea was to make as much money as possible and move to Thailand. She knew the idea was to move to Thailand, but she didn't understand that the more we spent, the longer it would take. I think she didn't understand that, or maybe she didn't care. That house took a bit longer from purchasing to getting the money from the sale. All in, it was about 9 months in total. And while I didn't make as much money, it was still £30,000, which I thought was good. It was basically like a salary. But we weren't spending very much money because I was working all the time, so most of the money was saved. However, throughout that renovation, it was clear that my wife was struggling to live in England. I mean, she was really struggling and starting to get upset, and I didn't like to see her that way. For the next one, I rented a cheap place that was more comfortable for her while working on the next project, but she started to become very depressed and she stopped eating. She was really struggling to be in England, and that was making it more difficult for me to work. I was spending more money because of the rent, which would mean I would probably need to do one extra project in order to make the same amount to retire than I otherwise would have needed to do, so it was difficult. It was about halfway through working on that third one that I decided that the only thing we could do was take my wife back to Thailand because she was having such difficulties by being there. I tried to introduce her to other Thai people that were living there, but she wasn't interested in that. All she wanted to do was go back to Thailand, so I put that project on hold and we flew back. We discussed about what she'd do when she was back in Thailand, and she kept going on and on about how she wanted to do something like I was doing, although she wanted to do it in Thailand. I kept telling her that I didn't know enough about it. I didn't know enough about it, and you definitely didn't know. I kept telling her that, but it seemed that she was adamant that she wanted to try. We were in Pattaya and looking around at some available condos and houses, but the numbers just didn't add up to me. As much as I would have wanted them to, because I would have much rather done this in Thailand than England, they didn't add up, and I managed to convince my wife that it was a bad idea. After I'd convinced her that it was actually a bad idea, it can't have been a few days after when I was walking to go and meet a friend. If you remember, the one who I met at Cheap Charlie's on my first retirement attempt, but I was going to meet him at a bar. I just walked past an estate agency and looked in the window because I'd done that every single time I'd walked past one since I'd been in Thailand, and we'd probably been there for 2 weeks. And there was a condo unit that seemed to be very big, that was priced very well, and it did need a full renovation. It just seemed to be different to the other condos we'd seen, and it did look like if it was done properly we might be able to make a small profit on it. I made a note of the number and went for a few drinks with my friend and returned back to the hotel that evening and told my wife. Bear in mind, I'd already convinced her that this wasn't a good idea, so this was me coming to her, telling her that maybe this could work. Maybe this could be something that she could do while I was finishing off the project back in England. We went to look at the condo the following day, and I did find it quite expensive for what it was in terms of what I could buy in England, but it was so much less than the other condos in the building, and it did seem like it could be a good opportunity and something for her to do so she could learn about what it was about, and then I could go back to work in England. I decided to buy it. It was, like I said, not cheap, about 3 million baht. It worked out it would probably cost about 1 million baht to get it to how it should be, but it should be able to sell for 4.8, which was still cheaper than 3 units listed in that building at 5.8 million. It was in a great location, it seemed to be well managed, the pool was nice, and I transferred the money into Thailand, and it was purchased in my wife's name because she would be the one dealing with it and selling it after it was done. She was very happy to have this project to work on. She had the budget in her bank to do it, and I left her to it and returned to England to finish that house that needed finishing. We were speaking hours every single day, and she was telling me how things were going, and I was telling her the same. And I'm seeing pictures of the progress, and it's coming along very well. I gave her a lot of tips about things to do, how much things should cost, what the design should roughly look like, and it was coming along like that. It took me about 2 months to get the house in England to a saleable state, and I sold it and made about £30,000 on that one, which I was very happy with. Around the same time, my wife had finished his condo, and it really did look fantastic. It was like it was brand new, and I could actually see myself doing more. She actually received an offer of 4.5 million, and we decided to take it on the condition that the person buying it would pay the transfer fees, which they agreed to. My wife was elated that she'd managed to do this thing, and I was very happy as well because we'd made about 500,000 baht. But one thing that I didn't notice was it seemed to change my wife, as if she'd managed to do this and now she was an expert on property renovation, and she said she wanted to do another one. I'd already put in an offer that was accepted on another house in England, and I wanted to do that. So I just said, let me finish this one and then I'll come back to Thailand and we can do one together there because things were looking really good. I was thinking, given the fact that my wife wasn't with me and I missed her, tremendously in fact, that after I finished this last house I would move to Thailand and retire. It wouldn't be 100% sort of retirement because we'd have the hobby of buying and selling a few condos. It looked like I could have been wrong and it was actually possible. Maybe I was getting ahead of myself because doing something once isn't exactly a proof of concept, but I liked the idea of going back to Thailand and spending time with my wife because that's why I married her. I do speak to my wife every day when I'm finishing the last house, so when it was finished, I decided to fly to Thailand and wait for it to sell, which it did 2 months later. I made £28,000 on that one, and while it didn't feel like I had enough to retire and not do anything, I did feel like I had enough to last for a long time, and that was including the condo in Thailand and the money that came from it and all my calculations. Every time I spoke to my wife when I was working on the last one, we just discussed what we would do when I was there. Ideas that I had, ideas that she had. We didn't really talk much more than that. Maybe what we had to eat, just the normal conversations. I arrived in Bangkok, made my way down to Pattaya and went to the little place that I rented before to see her. She was very happy to see me, I was very happy to see her, and there was no indication that there was anything wrong. We went out that evening for a meal, and I hadn't gotten to talking about anything yet when she said she needed to say something. She said, "I hope you're not mad, but I buy other place already. I think we can make good money." I was very shocked when she said that she bought a place without consulting me, thinking that this could be a very bad thing. In fact, I was pretty convinced that it was going to be a very bad thing because I don't even think she knew what she was looking for. But I didn't want to say anything that evening. I'd only just returned and I hadn't seen the place yet, so I couldn't know for sure. So I just said, let's go and have a look at it tomorrow. I didn't say anything else because if I was extremely angry or disappointed, there was no point doing that. I had to at least see what it was like first, to see if it was good or not. I was very angry, really, when I found out about this. But I just forgot about it that evening because I was only just back in Thailand and I was there for my second retirement. The following day, she took me to look at the place and my worst nightmares were realised. She bought a brand new condo for 4.2 million baht, telling me she wanted to invest 200,000 to renovate it and she thinks we could sell it for 5 million. I couldn't believe that she said that. She went against everything that I told her. You need old, you need run down, you need really cheap. Everything I told her about my business. She had done the exact opposite, thinking that she was going to make money simply by redecorating this brand new condo. The fact that it was new was very bad as well, because if we wanted to sell it right there and then, we'd lose money on it. And right there, I just saw half of the money I made on the last house gone. I saw that it was a likely loss, and we'd take this place, get rid of it, and lose what I'd made on the last one. She could tell I was very disappointed. I was furious. I was trying to hold it back as best as I could because I didn't want to be the guy who screams and shouts at the top of his voice so everyone around can hear. But that's what I felt like doing. I just told her that was the most stupid thing I'd ever seen. How did you expect to make money like that on a new condo? They're already being sold over what they're worth, at least in my opinion. And she just said that people who sold it said it was a good idea. Of course they're going to say it's a good idea because they want to make a sale. But what I found out next was even worse than this. I felt I had to say something to her, and I said, when are you going to start on the renovation? And he said, oh, I was waiting for you to come back because I don't have the money for it. But if this cost 4.2 million and you got 4.5 for the other one, and I've given you living expenses because you don't take money out of the investments, what happened to the 300,000? When she said that she used that as a deposit on another condo in the same building as she bought this one, and that the mortgage payments were going to be due soon, that was when I became the guy that everyone looks at for screaming and shouting at the top of his voice. I went from arriving in Thailand, thinking that there was 4.5 million baht sitting there waiting for me, as well as the money I had in England, to arriving in Thailand and finding out that my wife has used 4.2 million of that to buy a brand new condo and used the other 300,000 as a deposit for another condo in the same building. The mortgage payment was 25,000 baht, and I said to her, even if your idea worked, which I can promise you it won't, if you're paying that as a mortgage, and you pay that for 10 months, considering most of it is interest, you're not going to make any money anyway. What were you thinking? She was getting quite defensive, saying that it was a good idea. The sales staff told her it was a great idea, and they said if I could buy one for cash, I should try to get another one. She was being so defensive and assertive, as if I was being unreasonable. She was expecting me to invest this 200,000 to renovate this condo. When it was bought, it was just a bare shell. It had basic fixtures and fittings, but it was a bare shell, so you could put your own stamp on it. And she thought that we could get it to a great state for only 200,000, which wasn't going to happen because you needed to spend that on furniture alone, probably more. I just couldn't believe that she'd done that because now I was on the hook for that monthly payment. As well as the rent from the place we were living in, now this was due as well, and it was very, very bad. I didn't know what to do. I'm looking at the situation like, if this isn't sorted out properly, then I might not even have money to retire, and I was just so angry with her. It was 3 days later when she dropped the last thing on me. She said, I really thought you would have been happy, but I actually took a loan out against the condo, only a small one, she said, and she used that to buy some land in her village and paid an initial payment to a builder to have the house built. It went from being extremely bad to so much worse than that. I don't know what she was thinking. I really don't know what she was thinking. Now I do. I know what she was thinking. If I look back, she just wanted to do things without any regard for me. I was just so dumbfounded, though, at what I saw was stupidity. I didn't know what to do. I will have to say that so many times because I didn't know what to do. I was so angry, but I was also upset. But at the same time, I also believed that she didn't mean to do what she did. I just thought it was stupidity. Stupidity was one thing that I could overlook and make sure that I never gave control to her again. If it wasn't stupidity though, if it was her plan all along, if she was being apologetic saying she thought it was a good idea, she thought that we could make money, but she didn't actually think that, she was doing it just trying to get money out of me, that would have been different. She'd never talked about wanting to live in her village. I'd been before when we got married, I liked it there, but I never thought about living there. After I took a few days to calm down and think about how to fix this problem, all that I could think about was selling those 2 condos for whatever we could get for them as quickly as we could sell them. Get that out of the way, and then we could see what the damage was and think about what to do after that. I told my wife that will be the only way to do things, given the fact that she wasn't going to make the money she thought on those condos. Initially, we put them up for sale at the price she paid for them, but no one was biting after 2 months. I'm paying the loans, so every month goes by I'm losing the interest, which was quite high because she got quite high interest loans from the bank, not knowing the difference. I'm just losing. I can't believe it, and I'm losing this money. Every month goes by, I was probably losing 20,000 baht. So we put the price down, another month goes by, it doesn't sell, and price down again, and it got to the point where they both sold for about 3.5 million each. That meant she lost 700,000 on one, and on the other she lost 300,000 and 400,000 on top of that. 1.4 million baht she lost, but she said that we had the land in the village and she'd given the first payment. Turns out though that first payment was just a deposit and no work had started. When I spoke to my wife again about the fact that she'd lost 1.4 million baht, she was very upset about it, but it was as if it wasn't her fault. She blamed the salespeople for saying it was a good idea, which I wasn't buying. It was her stupidity. The reality though was that was an amount of money that was lost, plus the interest payments. That was probably what I made on the last house. It was very, very annoying. Plus, this land in the village, and 100,000 non-refundable deposit to the builder. It was clear that she expected to continue building that house. It was unbelievable. After working everything out, thinking that I don't want to go back to England, she's lost some money, she's already spent money on something, I decided to continue with the build in the village. It really felt like I was pushed into a corner, and I made that decision quite hastily, thinking that I could salvage this retirement by living there and saving money there and travelling frequently to other places. I agreed in the heat of it, and that was 3 million baht, all in her name of course because I couldn't own land in Thailand, and I was doing it purely because I thought I could save my retirement by doing so. What that meant was, by the time it was ready, all the money that I had left in Thailand, that she sold the condo for, plus more money on top of it, it had all gone on her stupid decisions and gone on the house. For me though, I didn't see that money as money. 5.5 million baht probably. I saw it as the 300,000 baht a year income. Not a lot of money, but that was the start of a reasonable income in Thailand, plus what else I had on top, which was about 200,000 pounds. That would have been great to live on. But instead, just over a third of that had been squandered by her and put into this house. When it was ready though, we moved up there. I can remember moving in and being happy in the sense of thinking that, okay, we don't have as much money, not as much income, but we should be able to live here on the income and get by. Quickly, it became clear that we needed a car, so I had to buy that. Then a motorcycle just to go to the local shops, and after a month I'm getting bored. I'm spending money on things to put it in the house to try to keep me occupied, and then that 200,000 pounds I've got is all of a sudden 150,000 pounds, and my retirement number 2 is starting to look precarious. When she came to me saying she wanted to invest in a business, I just put my foot right down, saying there's no hope in hell that I will invest in anything here, because I didn't ever really want this house. It was just to try to salvage retirement, and I was so bored being there. She was a bit upset because she really wanted to do the business, and I could tell that she was behaving in a way that she thought if she did that, I would eventually cave in, but I never did. After living in the house for 3 months, I felt like I didn't have enough money, and instead of having 150,000 pounds, I was now at 145,000 pounds. So I knew there and then that I didn't have enough money and there was no point hanging around. I needed to go and make more. The fact that I had all the money in that house infuriated me because I never planned to do that. And the fact that my wife kept talking about wanting to do a business after everything she did, that was starting to annoy me as well because I didn't know why she thought she had the capability. She was wanting 3 million baht as well. I couldn't believe that she thought it was a good idea, but I wasn't giving in. What I did decide to do was go back to England and work on another house. She could stay in the house in Thailand, she didn't need much money to live on when she was there, and I could do that, try to make some more money to the point where we've got enough income to live the way we want to live. I was thinking I'd probably need another £50,000, but even that probably wouldn't have been enough. But that's what I was thinking at the time. This is when things went from bad to worse. Before I went back to England, I spent time looking for what I thought would be a good house to buy. And when I narrowed it down to a few options, that's when I left Thailand, so that I had something to look at straight away. I arrived back in England, had a look at the houses, and had already made an offer the second day I arrived, and it was accepted. And it was just a waiting game until it went through. One thing I hated about doing that work was how long things took to go through. It took way too long, but I managed to get it done within 6 weeks so I could start on the work. I am speaking to my wife as well, and I still feel like I love her and I want to be with her. I'm very disappointed that I'm in this position purely because of her, though. That was the first time things went wrong for me, working on a house. I missed one very important problem, and my expected renovation costs were now a lot higher. And by the time it was already done, I couldn't get my money back. I messed up big time, and it really struck my confidence because I worked for months, spent time away from my wife in Thailand, and I lost money. I don't even want to say it, but I lost £30,000. That was a very shocking experience, and like I said, it completely shook my confidence. And I thought that it was a good idea, but it wasn't. I thought I'd just lost my ability though, and I was scared to try again. I felt like I'd lost it, and I was scared to think about even doing anything like that. I was shaken. I was really, really concerned about life. I didn't know what to do after that. In hindsight, I should have just kept on to the house and kept hold of it, but I sold it because that's what I did. I bought, renovated and sold. And because I'd lost money, I really didn't have enough to do another one, given the fact that all those things had gone wrong in Thailand for me as well. I told my wife that there was a problem, and she just said, "Come back to Thailand, don't worry about it." If I'd have known what I would have found when I got to Thailand, I wouldn't have gone back. I would have just tried to get my head back in the game and tried to make some more money. I decided, though, that I was going to Thailand, and to accept that I didn't have as much money, and my retirement wouldn't be the one I wanted, but at least I should have some form of retirement. I left England feeling so embarrassed that I made such a mess, but I was shaken because of everything that had happened, and I wanted to be back in control on my own terms. I arrived back in Thailand, went up to the village, and after I'd been there for a week just trying to think about what to do, I found out the worst thing of all. She mortgaged the house and invested the money into that business that she wanted to do, saying it was a great idea and don't worry about it. All I could do was let her get on with it and hope that things would work out for her. After 6 months, though, of a very uncomfortable living situation and an even more uncomfortable mental position, it was obvious that my wife wasn't capable of doing this business, and she didn't have any money to pay back the mortgage on the house. 2 million baht. One problem you face when you're in a position like that is you're not able to think rationally. You're very emotionally charged, and whereas what the old me would have done, which would have just been to say to her, "Sorry, it's over, forget about all the money I'd lost," my second time of losing a load of money in Thailand, and I'd have gone back to England and tried to get myself back on track. But because it was so emotionally charged, and the idea of losing all that money, the idea of losing my wife, the idea of losing the person I wanted to spend the rest of my life with, all that added together made me think that I needed to pay back this loan, otherwise my whole life would come to an end. So I paid it back, and then I had less than £100,000, and I can't work out how my life ended up like this. I knew it was a mistake when I did it. I knew it was a mistake when I paid that back. And because I couldn't see any way to make my retirement work now, for the time being there was no immediate worry, but I was in a very bad place mentally. One problem was I just didn't want to be in that house because it represented everything that had gone wrong. So I went with my wife to Pattaya and rented a place there and just tried to think about what to do. Money is going down and I don't have enough money to do anything back in England now, and I'm just racking my brains thinking how to get out of this mess that I believe my wife was solely responsible for causing. I'm drinking heavily, which doesn't help, but I felt like I got to a stage of happiness in a way because I was drinking so much it numbed out all my surroundings, which was a good temporary fix, but a very bad long-term fix because I was blowing through money hoping things would fix themselves. Because I'm always getting drunk, my wife is starting to have a problem with me, saying I shouldn't be doing this, I should be saving money. But she never understood how it was her fault that I was doing this, and she should have been trying to support me to get through it. We spent a year in Pattaya, and during that year the relationship got worse and worse, and my money went down and down. And it got to the point where my wife went out one night and she didn't come back. She called me the following day saying she doesn't think the marriage will work out. And the very fact she even said that was a sign for me that she never loved or respected me, because she didn't look at everything that I'd done for her, or everything she'd done wrong, as being anything other than how it was. The very fact that she had the audacity to say that to me, that hurt me so much, and I knew I'd been stupid all along. I tried to talk her out of it, but there was no point. I didn't feel the same way about her anymore because she should have never said that. Even if she didn't love me or like me like she did before, what she said was wrong. She should have accepted how it was because it was her fault, but she didn't want to do it. It was over, and we got divorced, only a week after telling me that she didn't want to stay with me. I lost that house and everything I'd invested with her, but I did have my car, although the motorcycle was in her name. I went off the rails a bit after that. I was extremely depressed, but more than that, I was just angry with myself that I'd allowed things to go so wrong and that I'd given her enough control to be able to force my hand so many times. I sold the car immediately, and that felt good to get some money back, but instead of going back to England straight away, I stayed on in Pattaya, hoping that I could find something to do. What happened instead over the next year was me getting in an even more worse state mentally, and because of that, financially. And I was getting drunk every day trying to ignore the fact that I was running out of money. I saw that the writing was on the wall though when I only had, I can't even remember, less than 500,000 baht in my Thai bank. And that was all I had. I knew right then that I had to go back to England and face facts, and that my retirement had failed. My second retirement had failed. And it almost felt like I was jinxed. Looking back at that time in my life is such an awful thing to have to do because it wasn't meant to be like that. Things could have gone well if only she hadn't tried to do her own things. But then again, I think she did those things because it was her idea all along to somehow get things out of me, and once she did get things out of me, get rid of me. She got the house, she got the money I paid back that she borrowed on it, and she let me lose money by making stupid investments that she had no business making. But then again, I'm the one to blame for allowing her to be in that position in the first place, because part of me thinks I actually am. I haven't been back to Thailand since, and the thing that hurts the most is Thailand where I wanted to be. But when I'm in Thailand, everything seems to go wrong. Back in England, I managed to get myself back on my feet, and I probably would have enough money to go and retire to Thailand again, but I don't trust myself. Something would go wrong somewhere, and I can say that I'm not able to let that happen. It took me a long time to get over that. Part of me is still getting over it, and it was nothing short of the worst thing to ever happen to me.